Hey, howdy warriors. Welcome to week 2 of technical and personal communications in aviation. We might have some guest speakers tonight in the form of our neighbors' dogs. So if you hear them barking in the background, try and ignore them. I've learned to. So we'll make do. We'll do the best we can. Hopefully you can't pick them up in the microphone, but I can hear them, and forgive me if they're a little distracting from time to time. I'll do my best. All right, let's get started, shall we? Yep, technical and professional communications for aviation. Week 2, the writing process. We're going to start talking about just how to go about doing this thing called writing. All right, here's what we're going to be looking at today. Some first words on the subject. We're going to learn how to define our purpose. We're going to define that target audience. Then we're going to choose our format for our documents. And then we're going to talk about document cycle. Okay, not too hard this week. Let's do those first words. So, research has shown that writing is just another skill. Okay, you may not be born with it, but it is something you can develop, just like riding a bike, just like learning how to turn a wrench on an airplane. All right, so don't be too intimidated. At this point, I suspect most of you in this class have had at least one college-level writing class, an English comp class of some kind, maybe. And so that will come in handy. Although technical writing is a little different, but that's why we're taking this class now. Okay, so the first thing you need to know is that you never write the final product. It does not come from your brain to your fingers to the keyboard perfect the first time. Hardly. It's a process. So you carve out your finished product like you would a sculpture, and you start rough on the first pass, and then you refine as you go and work it over again and again. My time in grad school at Sam Houston was spent almost entirely writing. It was very writing-heavy coursework. So I started out just by putting out ideas, not even in any kind of outline form. Just what do I want to talk about on this topic? Boom, boom, boom. Then I would start to figure out where they go in order to each other. Then I would start to hang words on those ideas and then get those words revised and revised and revised until we had a finished product. So that's how you go about it. Yes, it's time consuming, but it certainly makes for a much better product at the end. Okay. We're going to use for a model for examining all this, James Kenevy's communication triangle. It's in the textbook, but I made my own here. We start out with the topic that we're going to be writing on. Then you add your writer, that's you. And then we talk about, or we identify who our audience is. And once we know about all those things, then we can start to talk about the content we're going to deliver. People make a mistake of assuming they need a specific kind of contact before they've done any of the other prep work. So we'll talk about that in detail a little bit more. Let's talk about defining that purpose. Why are we writing? What's the point? What are we doing? This isn't poetry. This isn't art. This is technical writing. So there's got to be a purpose to it. Okay? As a technical writer, you also need to remember you're not writing for yourself. You're writing for your employer. So the words that you're putting down on the page or on the document, which is the better expression because it may not be on the page, represent the employer. So make sure you're doing that well, or you may not get asked to do that job again. All right. So you should not be writing in ways that reflect your own personality. You may have a great way of saying things. You're really good with the turn of phrase. If it sounds too much like an individual and not like a company, then that's you're not meeting the objectives. You're not meeting the goals. Shouldn't be able to tell that it's from a specific person. It does help to adopt a persona. That word just means it's like an act. Pilots adopt a persona when they get in the cockpit, right? That's when they talk like this to their passengers, right? It sounds like a pilot. It puts people at ease. They don't just get up there and say, hey, y'all, we're going to Kentucky today. We're going to Vegas. Let's go. They sound like a pilot. They put on a persona of a pilot. You can do the same thing depending on what the project is. Put on a persona that helps you write uniformly, okay, and consistently. Sometimes you can have more than one purpose, right? We don't have to have just one purpose in a document, so it's worth spending some time to figure that out and settle that before you get started writing. Usually, what we're writing has a purpose of either informing, instructing, or persuading. That could be combinations of those, and there may be other purposes to your writing as well. But those are pretty common, especially in technical or business writing. Okay. Let's talk about when discovering the purpose of the document you're creating, you need to think about a few things. And these are in the textbook. You can refer back to them for a little more detail. Is our writing responding to something? Like something happened and we're writing up a memo to address that? Is it replacing an existing document? Why is it replacing that document? What's wrong with that document? What can we avoid? What can we learn from that previous document so we don't make the same mistake and we actually put out something that's better? Does it introduce a new idea? Does it present complex information? Are we going to need to get our charts and graph skills put together here so that we can introduce some or present some complex info? Does it instruct workers or does it instruct users? Is it where's it going? Is it staying in the company or is it going out? And that's what we would refer to as. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself at the slide here. So we're going to find that topic. Sometimes you might have to write about the topic that you're not familiar with. You might get an assignment to write about something you know a little bit about, but not a bunch. So before you put your fingers to the keyboards and start writing, you need to do a little research to get that information right. Now, when you're at home and you're curious about something, you can ask Alexa or Siri, or you can Google it or whatever, but a quick Google search is not the best idea when we're doing a technical writing project. We've got to get it right, and we've got to know that our sources are right. So while you're in school, you've got your writing center, and you've got the library on campus that you can access remotely. So every student has access to that. Please use that as a resource in any and all of your classes when you're doing a writing project. Now, when you're out of school and you're working in your job and you get a writing project that you need to brush up on a topic, use a local library. They love it. Call them up, tell them what project you have, tell them you need a little bit of research finding some good sources on a topic. They eat it up. That's what they're there for. Okay? So we want to make sure that we're searching primary sources in journals. That means primary source, that would be a report directly from, say, Department of Transportation, or directly from an airline, or directly from the FAA. And the journals on the subject, there's plenty of aviation journals that are respected. They're peer-reviewed before that article goes out. Many eyes have looked at it, and everyone agrees that it's a good document. So those are great places to go for brushing up on a topic that you're not familiar with. You can interview the subject matter expert. Might be someone in your company, might not be somebody in your company. Of course, manuals and tech specs are the bottom line when it comes to technical jargon or technical processes. So also before you're done, part of your review process, have that subject matter expert take a look before it goes out. Get a set of eyes on it from somebody who does understand the topic. Make sure you're not putting bad information out there. All right, let's define the target audience. We have highlighted the audience down there in the bottom right corner. So the audience means whoever the document is intended for. Remember, when I say document, it could be anything. It could be a PowerPoint, it could be a memo, it could be an email, it could be a graphic project, a chart, or a table. So your approach may differ greatly depending on the target of the audience, or the target audience, right? And the target audience is just like it sounds. It should be something that's very specific. You want to define that target audience as narrowly as you can to increase your effectiveness of your document. So the broader that target, the less likely you are to succeed. If you're writing something that's supposed to appeal to everyone, you'll probably wind up influencing no one. Okay. Sometimes you may design a document for a specific audience, but you have to keep in mind that it may go to a secondary audience, right? You may write something like a proposal to your boss that you think is just for the boss. And then it turns out they kick it up to somebody beyond them. I know this because I've had it happen, and I was speaking a little frankly with my boss, and they just sent it on up the chain, and I was a little nervous. Turns out everything was okay. But I should have been a little more cautious about that, because once you release a document into the wild, you don't have control over it anymore. Unless it's some sort of a secret clearance or, regulated or highly controlled document or report, you send something to somebody, they could forward it to whoever they want to, unless there's a legal recourse to doing that. So be aware of that when you're writing. You can't control it once it gets out of your hands, most likely. All right, good advice. So that leads me to thinking about whether is it an internal or an external audience. Usually in your job as a technical writer, or if you're ever asked to do some technical writing, you're going to be aiming for the internal audience. Rarely will you be doing any work that's going to go to an external audience. That's for the marketing department or for an external marketing organization if they hire that kind of thing out. They'll worry about the external audience. But whatever you write, just be aware that it could wind up going external even though it wasn't intended to. Also need to be aware of cultural considerations. If you're doing any kind of international business, make sure that your writing conforms to the norms of the culture. You don't want to lose that audience because you're writing in such a way that is going to be off-putting to them. You want to influence them. You want them to make a decision that in the benefit of your company. So you should take that into consideration when you're writing. Also, avoid idioms. An idiom is kind of a phrase that we understand to mean something. It's raining cats and dogs, okay? That might not translate so well into French. That might be like, oh, what do you mean? It's raining cats and dogs. Or business is booming might mean something to one culture and might mean the complete opposite to another culture. And of course, other cultures have phrases that mean something to them, and then we hear it and we're like, that makes no sense at all. So we'll talk about that in Global Perspectives class when we get there. All right. Okay, use of tone. This is still audience-centric. The tone is how you present yourself, right? I like to use the teenager example. If your teenager, uses a certain tone with you, it turns you from being receptive to being very unreceptive rather quickly. So think about the same thing with your audience. Tone has a direct impact on how the reader perceives and receives the document. How they perceive it is going to dictate how they receive it. So your tone, no matter what, needs to be professional in any situation. Again, we're writing for the company, not for ourselves. All right. So sometimes friendly tone is appropriate. You think like a newsletter or I don't know, something about an internal press release about somebody retiring. So we can be friendly about that. Sometimes a serious tone is needed. You've got a reprimand or something. There was an accident or an incident, and you need to communicate some safety information. You don't go into that one all, jolly and like we're getting ready for the company holiday party. You need to make sure that your tone and your topic match accordingly, that they pair up nicely. All right. So what happens is we talk about us, the writer, what we're bringing to it. We talk about the topic. What is it that needs to get communicated? And we ask a lot of questions about our audience. We figure out who they are. That will dictate the content, all right? So we know the purpose, the topic, and the audience. We can now decide the format for the content. Never start with a format choice. Let the other factors determine it. I used to be a communications director for a large church in the Denver area. One of my big rules when someone came to our department for some communications help for whatever project they had going on, people would walk in my door and say, I need a brochure. And I'd say, stop right there. Tell me what you're trying to communicate and who you're trying to communicate it to first. Then we'll decide if a brochure is the best way to go for it. That was just what they thought. That's what they're used to being able to hand out. They're easy to produce. They can print them on the printer and they can put them in people's hands. But there were many other options available. So you don't let the format come first. That is definitely getting your cart out in front of your horse. Oh, I just used an idiom. Okay, I should avoid that. We will be learning about many formats in this class. You can look at figure 2-6. It's too complicated to replicate, but it's a great flow chart, and you'll be using it coming up soon on one of your early minor projects to determine the kind of format you need for a project. So the kind of things we're going to be, formats we're going to talk about in this class are short communications, summaries, short reports, some graphic elements. We're actually going to spend a little more time on graphics because that's an area where people have less experience and it's a very powerful tool. We're going to do user instructions. I hope that's going to be a fun project for us, where you get to tell us how to do something and write up the instructions for it. Maybe it's bake cookies or change the oil in your car or smoke a brisket or whatever. So we're going to have a project like that. We're going to do process descriptions, and the big project is the proposal. And that's look in the notes for this week. Your exercise, the discussion board this week is going to help get you started on that project. All right. Now let's talk about the document cycle. We've identified all the stuff. Now we need to start figuring out how to get it done. So your document's not going to be created in one session. If you're sitting down intending to get any of these projects done in one go, I don't recommend it. You need to follow the recommendations in the book and what this lecture's had so far. So remember that your best work comes when you start with the roughest of outlines. It could just be some bullet points. It doesn't even have to be bullet points. It could be ideas on an index card or a series of index cards. Then you refine the work as many times as it takes to get to your final version. That path to success is going to involve reverse engineering a schedule based on when you want the project to be complete. So if you've got a due date, you start backing up from there, however many iterations you think it's going to take and how long each of those iterations is going to take, then you'll have a good idea of when you need to start, and then you need to add more time to it because the unexpected will happen. You'll get sick. Something will happen, you'll get pulled away for work. I don't know, you'll stub your toe on something. Whatever. Your power will go out. Your computer will decide to update, 5 minutes before you turn in your last, before the project is due. You don't want to cut this stuff close, all right? Just like delivering an aircraft. You don't want to cut it close. You really want to get that done. There's always something that pops up at the last second, right? All right. Where are we? Let's look at the document cycle. This is reproduced from your book. So the first thing is prepare, right? That's identifying all those things, audience, topic, format for the document, all that stuff. We're going to make all those decisions in the prepare phase. Then we're going to write our first draft. That could take a while. It's probably the longest phase is the first draft because you've got to take nothing and turn it into something. Then, this is the nice part, you get to review and cool down. Hand that first draft off to someone you trust and who will give you honest feedback, right? I always joke around, don't hand it to your mom. She's just going to tell you you're great. She's, oh, good job, honey. No, you don't want that. You want to hand it to somebody who is going to review it and give you some honest feedback. While they're doing that, take your mind off the hook on this project. Walk away from it. Go do something else. Do a hobby. Work on your other class. Work on a project that's coming down the line. But stop thinking about this project for a little bit. Your brain wants to take a break from it and walk away. You'll get better ideas. You get fresher ideas if you do that. So then you're going to get that feedback from your reviewer, and you're going to revise. Revising is a lot like a draft. I would get revisions back or reviews back, and then I would revise, and it's the same thing. I would just barf out the information onto the page in no particular order, and certainly not with any finesse. And then I would edit that. So you get those ideas out on the page, and then you can sit there and polish them and make them look good. Then take it back to that reviewer. Okay, this is a little circle here. We're going to go round and round as many times as you need to until you feel and the reviewer feels that you've got a solid piece of work. At that point, you can now take it out for proofreading. Okay, proofreading is not reviewing and revising. Proofreading is that last set of eyes on it before it goes out. It's like when you put your work card in to have an inspector come and check your work. The inspector's not there to actually tell you, how many things you did wrong, right? The inspector is there to verify that you did it right. You have no business sending your work card to an inspector unless you already, as the mechanic, know that it's done and it's ready for inspection. Inspectors sometimes find things. That is why they're there. But if you rely on that inspector to be the decision maker on the project, that doesn't go well, right? Same thing for our proofreaders. We want our proofreaders just to make sure, yes, it's perfect. Verify, right? Get that second set of eyes on it because you'll probably miss something. And they're there to help you. But they're not there to do any reviews at that point. They shouldn't be suggesting major rewrites. They should be saying, oh, you left out a comma or, spaces here or whatever. And then you're ready to distribute. Remember, once it's distributed, it's out in the wild and you can't control it anymore. It's too late. So once you understand that document cycle, you need to make your plan. The plan's based on how many iterations you think you need. Don't underestimate. It's better to be done early than late. And then you use a Gantt chart to plan your time. There's an example in the text, and I've also got one here. Gantt charts are essentially a linear description of how the project is going to get done over time. So you've got elements of the project. This is a very generic one, task A, B, C, D. And then you've got, on that row, you've got dates and when it should be done. And then you've got a little marker that shows where we are. In this case, you can see that task A is connected to task C. So task C can't start until task A is done. Actually, it connects to task D as well. Task B can start and run a little long, and then, what is this? Task E is connected to task B. So Gantt charts can get very complicated. There's lots of software out there that'll do them for you. If you, on a very complex project, if you use a proper Gantt chart with a lot of automation built into it, it's very helpful. If you're a project planner, I'm sure you're used to these, seeing these kind of things already. Anyway, the Gantt chart. We're going to be using those in our big project. I believe that's all we've got. So, as always, send me your questions. Be happy to answer them. Anything you want to know more about in this lecture or in the reading in the book, just shoot me an email through Canvas, and I'll be happy to get back to you. Be sure and check on that discussion board project this week in the instructions for what we need to get done. And again, contact me there too if you need to. I'm happy to help. All right, just an email away. Thanks, and y'all have a good evening.